Are we ready?
Although they'll still ignore it.
Some would, some would.
Okay, they're giving me 45 minutes to talk about 5 hours worth of material. So I'll do the best I can. I believe I've actually bitten off more than I can chew, given the limitation of time. Unlike some of my predecessors, a lot of them, some of them have been in for a long time, but I've been in since I was 16 and now I'm 70. So I've been always considered a second-generation researcher. I am not a second-generation researcher. I am the kid of the first-generation researcher. I hung around with Sylvia Maher and Mark Lane and Penn Jones and Harold Weisberg, and all those people who are gone. So let me begin. I guess we've pretty much got everybody in here. Just trying to kill time here. All right, I'll start off with, I taught for 38 years at high school and 20 years teaching the course on the assassination at a college. So I will begin with good afternoon class. Now, unlike some of my predecessors, I'm well aware of the fact that a teacher is one who takes his students on an experience they couldn't have taken themselves, and that to entertain is as important as to educate. And there is a fine line between comedy and tragedy, which I think most people know, because we always laugh at the guy that falls down the flight of stairs, as long as it's not us. When my daughter was little, her niece used to pretty much live at my house, and they had helium balloons, and she opened the back door, and one of the helium balloons went out the door and up into the sky, and she screamed, "My balloon, my balloon!" And then she looked up and said, "Oh, it's Jen's." And so whenever something happens, and it's maybe unfortunate, but it doesn't have anything to do with me, I always say, "Not my balloon." At any rate, I want to start off with a few quotes. I want to talk a little bit about the JFK document files, and I'm going to counter some of the things that have been said because I am old and I've been around, and I said. Anyway, I realized today that there are a number of people who have never been to here before, never been to some of these, and if I had known that, I would not be doing the thing I'm going to do. I would have spent my 45 minutes dumping all over Lyndon Johnson and everybody associated him, because that really is, I don't consider him the mastermind, but they could not have done it without him. But I'll do my thing, but because of that, I want to throw a few things out here. Couple of quotes. This is a Christmas card that Lyndon Johnson sent out to his friends in December of 1963. "Greetings from dear country of Texas. We hope," and I believe there were venison's deer meat on the cover. "Greetings from dear country of Texas. We hope your holiday season will be more delectable because of our hunting season. In Texas from November on, the hills are alive with the sound of hunters. Here is the result killed this year by our trusty rifles on the LBJ Ranch." That's gloating. Nah, 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 nah. Okay? "I hate war, and the day comes when my vote must be cast to send your boy to the trenches. That is the day I will leave my Senate seat to go with him." Lyndon Baines Johnson, 1940. Okay? And I should quote this one. The most famous quote in the Kennedy assassination lore, after hundreds and hundreds of books, is from John Connally when he is shot. And most of you know the quote, "My God, they're going to kill us all." That is not what he said. That is not what he said. He said, you ready? Think about it now. Think. "My God, they're going to kill us both." Whoa. Oh, they're going to kill me too. Okay? He said, how do we know that? When he was interviewed by William Manchester, he told William Manchester, that's what he said. And then when William Manchester interviewed Jackie Kennedy, that's what she said, he said. And then when he went before the Warren Commission, that's when he changed it, because he knew he blew it. John Connally is Lyndon Johnson's best friend. Don't forget that. Okay, let's see, where do I go from there? I'll drop this. And I got to throw this up because for the newbies. Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we. George W. Bush. Our enemies are innovative and resourceful, and so are we. They never stop thinking about new ways to harm our country and our people, and neither do we. Very slow, very slow. The JFK assassination is the huge dam behind which all government lies are safely held. Malcolm Blunt, British researcher. The erosion of time is the greatest ally of conspirators and bureaucratic cover-ups. Edgar F. Tatro. Arrogance and ignorance and stupidity are a fatal triumvirate against the truth. Edgar F. Tatro. And that's for the people who say the CIA did it or the mafia did it alone. That's a limited hang-up. I have given several speeches where I talk about 50 conspiratorial actions that have nothing to do with the CIA or the mafia. I am not exonerating those groups, but there are a whole lot of other people that were involved in this. Okay, let's see here. Politicians and diapers must be changed often and for the same reason. A politician is a fellow who will lay down your life for his country. To find out who rules you, simply find out who you are not allowed to criticize. Okay? A nation that is afraid to let its people judge the truth and falsehood in an open market is a nation that is afraid of its people. John F. Kennedy. Since mankind's dawn, a handful of oppressors have accepted the responsibility of over our lives, that we should have accepted ourselves by doing so. They took our power by doing nothing, we gave it away. We've seen where that way leads, through the camps and wars toward the slaughterhouse. The magician and the politician have much in common. They have to draw your attention away from what they are really doing. No one party can fool all the people all the time. That's why there are two parties. The Democrats are the party that says government will make you smarter, taller, richer, and remove the crabgrass on your lawn. The Republicans are the party that says government doesn't work, and then they get elected and prove it. And this is from the TV show Fargo, and the evil guy that was in it, the British guy, his name was Varga. It's not evil that makes the world bad, it's good. Otherwise, who would care? Well, that's really profound if you think about it. Okay, the higher a monkey climbs, the more you can see his behind. Thinking about Arsenio Hall, things that make you go, okay. The men that American people admire most extravagantly are the most daring liars. The men they detest the most violently are those who try to tell the truth. Okay, and this is fascinating. Conspiracies are proven bit by bit until you have a mosaic. They are proven by circumstantial evidence. Conspiracies are conceived in shadowy recesses. They are not hatched on television in front of 5 million people. Vincent Bugliosi wrote the definitive Oswald Did It Alone book. What a scumbag. I met him twice. I debated him in the 70s and I beat him. He had a stalemate with Mark Lane, but afterwards out in the seats, he couldn't deal with me. Okay, this is going to hit a lot of you, because almost all of you are guilty, including Mr. Tracy. Man is not who he thinks he is what he hides. Guilt trip, guilt trip. From William Shakespeare, we get hell is empty and all the devils are here. Jay Leno said we should make politicians dress like race car drivers. When they get their money, make them wear the company logos on their shirts. And politics is something similar to the lower physiological functions, with the unpleasant difference that political functions are unavoidably out in public. Okay, so that's food for thought stuff. This is hard to do because there's a laptop here and it's making everything slide. Have to do what I can here. Have to be a juggler as well as a speaker. Okay. I want to talk briefly about the documents, and I only want to spend a couple of minutes because I really want to get down to the business at hand. Now, David Denton talked about the memo put out that the thing I am concerned about is, and so is Mr. Katzenbach, is having something issued so we can convince the public that Oswald is the real assassin. And that's been, you know, obviously, that's been released in the new documents. That document was originally released in 1978, so it's almost 40 years old. So it's not new. A lot of the stuff that's come out, it's like duplicates. And the new researchers, the people that got into it after Oliver Stone, said, look at this new thing. And I'm going, you know, when I was teaching school, and kids would come up to me, did you hear that new song, Pretty Woman by Van Halen? No, there was a guy named Roy Orbison, you know? And it's a variation off that same theme, you know? So anyway, I thought I would mention that. And the other thing I wanted to mention is there was a third person that David did mention that's involved in this whole, say Oswald did it. His name was Bill Moyers. And he's one of the great scumbags in American history. And what I love about him is he's saying that George W. Bush pushed an unjustified war. What about the one he pushed? You know? He's selective memory there. Okay, and on top of that, Elizabeth Forson Harris, who ends up being the editor of Ms. Magazine, was one of the security people at Love Field that day. And she got a phone call from Bill Moyers, who said, unless it's pouring rain, get that goddamn bubble top off that car. Now, The Guilty Men, Part 9 of the Men Who Killed Kennedy series, of which I was a primary speaker and I recruited almost everyone on it. And it's the greatest example of censorship in American history. And see me later if you're interested in that, if you haven't seen it. We were going to go after Bill Moyers next year. So when Bill Moyers and Jack Valenti, and we were going after Jack Valenti the next year, it is Jack Valenti who wrote the letter inviting Kennedy to the Albert Thomas dinner on November 21st. Kennedy accepted it. I have the letter inviting him and the letter accepting it. And when he accepted that invitation to go to that party on the 21st of November, then Lyndon Johnson's best friend, John Connally, went up to the White House in October, the 1st of October, 2nd, and said, hey, why don't we make it a 4 or 5 city tour? And there isn't a CIA agent in sight, and there isn't a mafia man in sight. It's Texas people, it's Johnson's people who got him there. And in April of 1963, April 23rd, it is Lyndon Johnson who goes on Texas radio and said, the president will be visiting Texas in the fall. Kennedy had made no such commitment and no reference to that at all. On that day, Jack Ruby starts making his long-distance phone calls to the mob. And then on June 5th, they meet in El Paso to start considering coming in the fall. And who's there? Well, I think it's Connally. I know Johnson's there. John Kennedy's there. Cliff Carter's there, one of the great scumbags in LBJ history, which I could go on for an hour about. Fred Korth is there. Fred Korth has to resign from the Kennedy administration the month before Kennedy's killed because of the TFX scandal and the Bank of Fort Worth corruption that he's involved with. And he's at the White House that night celebrating with Lyndon Johnson the night of the assassination. Okay? And they first considered, I think it's August 27th, for the coming to Texas. It's Lyndon Johnson's birthday. They wanted to kill him on Lyndon Johnson's birthday. No CIA agents here. I'm not saying they're not involved, but there's a lot more to this than that. And I know you know I'm right because it's so damn quiet in here right now. I can hear your voices. Holy shit. Oh, by the way, remember the H-bomb thing? Goldwater's going to blow up the world? And the little girl with the flowers? Bill Moyers made that act. Nice guy. Nice guy. When Walter Jenkins was bagged for being a homosexual and had to leave the Johnson administration, Johnson had Moyers go out and try to find gays in Goldwater's camp. And so he was trying to get dirt on gays in Goldwater's camp. And a man named Silverman, or something like that, wanted to write an article about this when he found some documents to this effect. And he called up Moyers to ask him about it. And he said, the CIA's lying, that's disgraceful. And he said, look, I've got all this documentation, I'll give you a chance to tell your side. And he said, what will my children say? But once he was bagged, so, you know, don't get pulled in by that Christian crap he throws out there, you know? Okay. David also mentioned that Earl Cabell, and he thought it was significant, but then I've been around a little bit longer. Earl Cabell signed the CIA secrecy document in 1956. And it's on the internet. Wow! The mayor of Dallas signs a CIA secrecy document in 1956. Oh my God! And my response was, his brother was the second most powerful man in the CIA, and John Kennedy fired him for the Bay of Pigs along with Richard Bissell and Allen Dulles. I would be surprised if he hadn't signed this secrecy agreement. Okay? What I find fascinating is when John Kennedy and Jackie Kennedy get off the plane at Love Field, and I felt a little freaky getting off the plane at Love Field today, or yesterday, you know. And when they got off the plane, Mrs. Cabell had yellow roses. Why? Yellow rose of Texas. Right? Okay. And John Conley, Mrs. Conley, she got yellow roses. Mrs. Cabell gave Jackie red ones. How about standing out a little bit in the motorcade? That's another one of those things that make you go, okay? And also, David mentioned one thing. I can go into a little bit deeper. I'll try to wing it here rather than reading here. I don't like to do that. But basically, around 1965 or so, the $3,000 coffin was dumped into the Atlantic Ocean. And there was a whole series of people that were involved, and they got engineers and spent quite a bit of money making sure that it went down the tubes. They drilled holes in it, they put sandbags in it, they dumped it off in the Atlantic Ocean in a part of the Atlantic Ocean that's officially owned by the US government, and we have mines there. So they wanted to make sure that not only would it sink to the bottom, but if anyone decided to play Titanic or something, whatever else you want, they might get blown up. And it was Earl Cabell who initiated the destruction of that coffin. Now, I'm not sure why it was done, but that is the truth. And of course, Cabell's connected to all kinds of creeps in this case. And I do want to quote David Lifton. David Lifton said, "That coffin is evidence. You don't go drop evidence into the sea. If this had been an ongoing murder investigation, this would be obstruction of justice. Whoever heard of dumping a coffin into the ocean? It is so bizarre. Now you're going to have this Titanic syndrome where somebody is going to go out and try to take a picture of it." And Billy Celestes, whom I was friends with, said, he was actually talking to me about, "Yeah, do you think there's any way we can get somebody to go down here and bring that up?" And I don't think so, Billy. So, anyway, let's see. Figure I'd get that out of here. And two sources have stated that a Dallas police officer named Jack Revell was asked by Earl Cabell to escort him as security up to Washington to visit his brother Charles. And Revell has told several people, one of them is in this room, that he got in there and it was Pentagon generals all celebrating. Okay? And I know from a motorcycle police, this park policeman, motorcyclist, he said that Johnson and his pals were celebrating in the White House. And if you watch The Guilty Men, you'll have the nanny, Mae Newman, who said, yes, there was a party at the Murchison home. It isn't just Madeline Brown, it's the nanny. And there were other people who were there that night. I'm not allowed to tell you who they are. You know? But the nanny made it clear there were champagne and caviar parties all week at the Murchison home. Oilmen, Pentagon generals, Lyndon Johnson. You know, he'll walk like a duck story. Okay, another thing that was interesting is in 2004, a document went to a researcher, and he sent it to a friend of mine named Bill Cheslock. And Bill Cheslock sent it to me, and I sent it to Tree Frog. And Ed Sherry, rest his soul, Ed Sherry is the disseminator of information. And the document was a 1964 document, and it was basically stating, I have it on a sheet of paper, I can read the quote. Bear with me for a second. I did, but I can't find it. And basically it said, it's from John McCone, the head of the CIA, to James Riley, head of the Secret Service, and it's basically saying Lee Harvey Oswald was a CIA agent working for naval intelligence and so forth. Well, when I saw it, I said, there's no way they would put that in print, and if they did, it wouldn't have lasted. So I suspect it was a fake. Now, I could be wrong, I don't know, but that was 2004. So I gave it to two researchers. They ran down to the archives, and they couldn't find it, and it's never been found. This week, it's been released in the Inquirer and in various websites saying it's real. Well, it's not in the archive, but it gives the impression that it was in the archives. You know, people are going to say, oh, this is a new thing, it must be from, it's not from the archives. So somebody's putting this out, and again, it's from 2004, and it's coming out 13 years later, and so very, very suspicious about that. Now, something that should be released is, I got two more, no, quick. Something that should be released is in the JFK library, okay? William Manchester interviewed Jackie Kennedy and Robert Kennedy for hours. Included as part of the papers of William Manchester are 4 audio tapes of interviews of Jacqueline Kennedy conducted on May 4th and May 7th, 1964. The written transcription of these pages covers 151 pages. There also exists a Manchester RFK audio tape interview conducted on May 16th, encompassing a written transcript of 72 pages. It is estimated that Jackie's tapes involve 10 hours of information. Okay? And the Assassination Records Review Board tried to get the JFK Library to release it, and they wouldn't. And insiders, and again, it's hearsay, but insiders say both of them nailed Lyndon Johnson. Now that ought to be released. Forget all this chicken shit I've just been talking about. Okay? And the other one was that Russian document, which I do think is valuable. The Russians are saying in 1965, yeah, we think we know Lyndon Johnson did this, okay? And David presented that to you, but that was released by the Assassination Records Review Board 25 years ago. It is not new, and yet it's on the news. Woo, woo. And even Roger Stone said, big story, the Russians knew. Well, Roger's 25 years too late, okay? But not the old man. Okay, one more. This was released, what's the date on this sucker? February 29th, 2016, before this recent batch, there was 86 pages from the Rockefeller Commission report, which just released this year. And so they hit it, okay? And those 86 pages talk about the CIA's, it's in conjunction with the Church Committee, the CIA's attempts to kill foreign leaders like Lumumba, Castro, and so forth. And those 86 pages were hidden all these years. The Church Committee was not happy about this. And they changed certain things. Like there was something about what the CIA did. The original document said it was, certain document said it was unlawful, what they were doing. And the editor of the 86 pages plus said, change it to merely exceeded agency statutory authority. That's pretty good. How's that for a euphemism? And who's the creep who did all this withholding and editorial changes? White House Chief of Staff for Gerald Ford, Dick Cheney. And Dick Cheney is one of the major figures in perpetrating the 9/11. And folks, if you want to know about 9/11, and I know quite a bit, but you have a lady over here, Barbara Honecker, who was in the Reagan administration, wrote October Surprise, and she will blow you away. On YouTube, there's a 3-hour documentary proving that the Pentagon was not hit by an airplane, and she's one of the great American heroes in this country. Barbara Honecker.
It's on YouTube. It's called Behind the Smoke. Kurt has over 500,000 views.
Wow.
Okay, how much time do I have now?
8 minutes.
You're kidding. I didn't even get to the stuff I wanted to do. Okay.
8 plus 5. Okay.
8 plus 5, okay. There's no way to do this. David mentioned that one of the new documents was this document that came out, an FBI document stating that the 4 million bullets were made by Winchester Weston in East Alton, Illinois. And it was the United States Marine Corps that ordered them. And the FBI said in this document that in December of '63 that the Marine Corps doesn't have a weapon that fires a 6.5 millimeter bullet. So what the hell do they want 4 million bullets they can't use? So the FBI speculated the CIA ordered the 4 million bullets using the Marine Corps as a cover. Now the CIA and the FBI never got along. They're always trying to jam each other. But unlike the rest of the world, I wrote to the Winchester Western Company, and the Warren Commission said the bullets were currently still being made, and they were made in 1954. But the Director of Personnel told me they were made in 1954, and it was a one-shot deal, so the Warren Commission didn't even get the date right, and they weren't being currently made. And their record said it was the U.S. Army who ordered the bullet, purchased the bullets. And I got a hold of through the freedom of the original, I got a hold of the invoices, and they were all generic numbers, and the head of the, I wrote back, and the head of the Olin company that represents public relations said, these are just rough things, these are not the invoices, I know that. And, you know, I tried to contact, finally, I contacted the Springfield FBI office, because there are things in the little offices that aren't in the main ones. And I said, I want any documents pertaining to the bullets that allegedly killed Kennedy. And they said, you can come to Springfield, Illinois anytime you want and look at our book stuff. I said, no. And so I said, you know, I put in a Freedom of Information Act. I want the bullet. I can't go there. And they said, well, and I said, okay, you're going to give me, and of course every time you write, it's a month. Snail mail. And so I said, okay, I want every damn document you have on the Kennedy assassination, the Springfield FBI Illinois office. And they said, we have 104 documents. I said, I want them all. He said, well, we're going to send you the 4 that pertain to the bullets. I said, no, I want them all. Okay? And I got them, and one of those documents states, from a document earlier than the one I just mentioned, from an FBI agent named Haynes, stating it was the Marine Corps who ordered the bullets. Okay? So it kind of gives you an idea. Then I started pursuing, I wrote to the Marine Corps, I corresponded with the chief historian of the Pentagon. You wouldn't, the Navy, I just never stopped. You can just imagine files on me, right? And I got one document, and again, I only have a couple of minutes, so I can't do this any justice. But one of the documents showed that the bullets were made in East Alton, Illinois, Winchester Western. They went to Greece, they went to Canada, they came through International Firearms Montreal, ended up at Century Arms Incorporated in St. Albans, Vermont. And then some of them must have trickled down to Texas. Century Arms Incorporated, and I'm running out of time here. By the way, Winchester Western Company, one of their key guys was Albert Hakim, and he's one of the main figures in the Iran-Contra affair under the Reagan-Bush administration. And I told this to the Assassination Records Review Board. I don't think they took too kindly to it. But at any rate, Century Arms Incorporated eventually moved to Florida. They supplied arms and ammunition for the Iran-Contra affair. They are supplying weapons right now to the Mexican drug cartels. They are making armor-piercing destructive devices. One of their weapons, they are selling weapons to Al-Qaeda people. One of the weapons was found in the Paris attack in 2015. They are linked to a company called BDM, which is owned by the Carlyle Group. And the Carlyle Group is the billion-dollar organization whose spokespeople have been George H.W. Bush, James Baker, and James Baker is the mentor of a fellow named Paul Manafort. Carlyle Group, and mentions have been made, and I don't have the time to go through it, but Carlyle Group bought up Ling Temco Vaught. Ling Temco Vaught was owned by D.H. Byrd, the owner of the Texas School Book Depository, the founder of the Civil Air Patrol with David Ferry and Lee Harvey Oswald. He's a Del Charo regular at Murchison's fancy summer vacation resort, close to Johnson, close to Conley. The Carlyle Group owns Hertz, Dunkin' Donuts, Baskin Robbins, and they purchased Bell Helicopter. Bell Helicopter, the two owners of Bell Helicopter are Arthur Young, who's the stepfather of Michael Payne, whose wife is Ruth Payne, who's living with Oswald's wife, and the other guy, Joseph Nashman, and they're the ones that made millions through the Vietnam War. Joseph crash, man, he was Lyndon Johnson's helicopter pilot running for the Senate in the 40s and 50s. These are not accidents, people. These are not accidents. Carlyle Group buys up Bell Helicopter. They buy up Collins Radio. Collins Radio is the primary radio thing for all military things, American. Okay? Collins Radio was owned by Arthur Collins. He got his money to start the company from D.H. Byrd. And Collins Radio was in control of the Air Force One tapes going back to Washington, and Johnson didn't know all his phone calls were being taped. We have about an hour and a half edited tape. There's at least 6 or 7 hours still missing 54 years later. And the Carlyle Group bought Collins Radio. And now they are sending tons of money to the JFK Library. So if you think you're ever going to get anything out of that JFK Library, you can forget it. I guess I'll say one more, and I just scratched the surface here, people. She's saying 5 minutes. I'll get this one little thing in. Years ago, I used to go to the JFK Library when there'd be somebody interesting speaking, and Kenny O'Donnell's daughter was speaking, one of John Kennedy's best friends. I met his other best friend, Dave Powers. I showed Dave Powers pictures of a gunman on the other knoll that no one has seen, almost no one, okay? I actually have it on one of my DVDs over there when I was young and pretty, about 25 years ago. And I showed them to him. He was speaking at Harvard about the wit and wisdom, and then they asked me to come talk about this conspiracy 3 weeks later. And I brought those, they invited me to hear Dave Powers, and I walked up, they introduced me, and I showed him the pictures. This was during when the House Select Committee was investigating, and his eyes nearly came out and he said, "Did you send these to Congress?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Good." Then he gave his speech, and when he was finished, he said to me, "Okay, I'll answer questions now." And he went right to me. I didn't even put my hand up. "Go ahead." I was 29, scared to death. I said, "Go ahead." I said, "Where did the shots come from to kill President Kennedy?" He said, "Well, you know, if you go to the 26 volumes of the Warren Report, you can read my affidavit." I said, "I brought it with me, sir." He said, "You did?" I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Would you please read it?" There's 300 people there. And they're going, "Who the hell's that kid?" and it says, he thought the shots came from the right front. Okay? Now, back to Kenny O'Donnell's daughter. She wrote a book about her father. And I'm the first one to run up to the microphone, of course, because you got to get there. And I said, she was talking how brave he was, how wonderful he was. And I said, your father was braver than you think. She said, "How so?" I said, "William Manchester was forced to take certain passages out of his book." The Kennedys even sued because they didn't want, he was cramping on Johnson, and Bobby wanted to become president. He didn't want to alienate Johnson until he could put him in jail. And anyway, I said, one of the passages taken out was a quote from your father. And at the back of the plane, he said, "They did it, they finally did it. You can't expect anything else from those people. They finally did it." And I said, "What do you think he was talking about?" He's talking about the people at the front of the plane. Zach Randolph mentioned Jack Brooks on the plane in a suspicious nature. Jack Brooks went to college with Malcolm Wallace. Okay? And again, you need to see the guilty men, one of the key suspects in this case. At any rate, I said that, and in the first 3 rows were all these Kennedys, all these old Kennedy and O'Donnell people supporting the girl. And I said, "I am writing a manuscript on the complicity of Lyndon Baines Johnson and the murder of President Kennedy, and I could sure use your help." And then other people got up and asked questions like, "What was your father's favorite color, you know?" And anyway, after it was over, 3 minutes, after it was over, I'm walking away, and there was a woman who worked at the library who had taken my course. Now that was before I knew what I know now. That was the first, that was like 76 through 93. And I knew the case, but I didn't know the who's and the hows and the whys and that. And she walked by me, pretended to walk by me as if she wasn't talking to me. And she walked by and she said, "They know you're right, and they're not going to come near you. You are the plague." And so I can go on and on here about Hess and Eisenhower, Johnson, and Hoover said, "You need a bulletproof car." Johnson brought the JFK Limo back to Ohio, and Hess and Eisenhower was originally built, had it completely rebuilt. You'll have to take my word for it, people. There was a bullet hole in the windshield, and they got rid of it, and another bullet was found, and they got rid of that, okay? Hess and Eisenhower is now building all the Humvees for the wars in the Middle East. And I can go on and on and on like that. Maybe you can get a couple of questions, I'll try to answer them. Thank you. Or two.
So, what is the reason for the murder of Officer Tippit?
I have no idea. I can only tell you that Texas insiders will tell you that Tippit and Ruby knew each other quite well, and that the truth of that is still buried. And anything I would say would be pure speculation. That's not my thing. I'm interested in exposing the really powerful people. I spent my whole life on this, and I can talk about all the little white supremacy people. I can talk about the Ku Klux Klan, the Congress of Freedom Incorporated, the Masons. I can talk about all the little people that were involved in peripheral things. I can talk about all kinds of mafia people. I'm friends with James Henry Dolan's son, who gave Jack Ruby an excuse for calling his mafia friends. I was trying to get him to speak here. He spoke at another place, and his family's angry as hell, and they're afraid, and he had to back out. So I can talk about all kinds of, but that's peripheral. I want to talk about the big boys, and I want to talk about how it ties to today. Let me tell you, like I said, there are links between the Kennedy assassination and 9/11. They are part and parcel of the same crap. You really need to follow that,
Absolutely.
I spoke in New Orleans last year. I went for 20 minutes, and I have a documentary over there that I did a whole thing on. I'll do two more. When the House Select Committee on Assassinations concluded there was a probable conspiracy to kill President Kennedy because of the acoustics tape, the Washington Post put out an editorial the next day saying, so what if there were two shooters? There might have been two men, coincidentally, unknown to each other, who decided to kill the president in the same place at the same time. That's a fact. Okay? This year in February, Paul Schrade, one of Robert Kennedy's best friends and a friend of mine who was shot in the head, Paul Schrade testified at Sirhan's trial saying, let this man go home. There were two shooters. We have an acoustics tape with 13 shots on it. Sirhan's only got 8. Okay? The news of the whole world. Sirhan is denied parole. One of his victims testified on his behalf. Nothing about the acoustics tape. Please! You spend 2 years talking about Casey Anthony killing her kid. Yet they got an acoustics tape from one of the victims saying there's two shooters, and you ignore them. And I can go on and on. Time is limited. Yeah.
This is really quick. I had this question earlier, but you actually already answered it. Time magazine put a thing out saying that the Kennedy grandchildren considered the assassination a distraction. And I was going to ask you about that, but you answered the question already.
Well, last year I was on a piano with Aldo Stone's kid. I was a consultant to Aldo Stone's film because I was at Clay Shaw's trial for a week. I was 22. Judge let me in, see the exhibits. I talked to Clay Shaw. I talked to Garrison. I talked to his assistant district attorneys, so forth and so on. And somebody asked him, were you ever afraid when your father was making the movie JFK? Were you ever afraid for your life? And he started laughing. I was just a kid. And I said, there are all kinds of documents in the National Archives showing there were threats on John and Caroline. And so it wasn't that stupid question, but he's just a young man. And he looked at me and went, and it was the old, oh shit again. So, yeah.
So this is out there, but do you think there's a relationship between Carlyle, Blackstone, Freescale, and the Malaysian airliner that disappeared?
I'm not qualified to answer this question.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Tatro.